What is going on, everybody? It's your boy Nothing But Skills, and today we're going to be talking about some huge news that came out from Title Update 6. I'll have a link to this in the description, but we'll be talking about most of the things you guys want to know: weapon buffs, exotic buffs, stash space, and some skill changes. And we'll go over everything I think you guys really want to know about, but the full list of the changes, it's pretty long, will be in the description. So let's talk about it first. So the first thing, stash space, it increased from 150 slots. Now the player starts with 200 but can upgrade to 300 slots total through perks. So up to 300 stash space. That's a plus for all of us who are stuck with having to create multiple characters because we don't have enough stash space. If you only have one character, this is great for you. 300 slots total, and then remember that's through the perks. One thing I did notice before we get into the weapon buffs, hip fire now forces the character to walk. So does that mean hip fire got nerfed? I need to test this out in the PTS. If you're on the PTS now and you've already tested this out, use the comment section down below. Let me know what's going on with hip fire. Did it get a pretty good nerf? Because before you could hip fire and still be sprinting, right? Now it forces you to walk. That could be a big game changer for hip fire in PvP. We go down, they did do some balancing changes to skills, and these are the damage adjustments for each one. They got a bunch of buffs. They had a couple nerfs, just in case you guys want to see the different damage adjustments. Remember, there will be a link for that. Now, before we get into the exotic buffs, I kind of want to go all the way down real quick. We are going to talk about what you guys want to see. Weapon balancing. Look at this. This is crazy. Assault rifles. So we're going to go through the assault rifles. The ACR, 3% damage increase. The AUG, 3% damage increase. The Carbine 7, which really needed it, 8% damage increase. The F2000, 5% damage increase. The FAL, 3% damage increase. G36, 3% damage increase. Less damage drop off past optimal range. I hope the G36 can come back. I missed that gun. The M4, 10% damage increase. So if you guys remember that police M4, that was horrible. 10% damage increase. Ooh, a fan favorite. Looks like it might be back in business. The P416, negative 5% damage decrease. So the P416 did get a nerf, but it looks like the police M4 is going to be making a comeback. The TAR-21 got an 8% damage increase. So it looks like we might be using different assault rifles besides the P416, which I'm really excited for. Now, for you guys who like using the LMGs, the light machine guns, the HK121 got a 9% damage increase. The KAG got a 5% damage increase. The M249, negative 4% damage decrease. The M60, woo, negative 10% damage decrease. So the M249, the M60 look like they took the biggest hit, but it looks like a lot of the other ones, the RBK got a 5% damage increase, 6% damage. So it looks like more LMGs will be usable now. That's what I'm excited to see. I was tired of just always using the M60, the M249. Now those other LMGs are going to be worth it. Just get some good talents on them. The marksman rifle, the M700 tactical buff, 19% damage increase. The M700 tactical. The M700 carbine buff, 19% damage increase. The classic M44 carbine buff, 14% damage increase. Hunting M44 buff, 8% damage increase. Custom the custom M44, 90% damage increase, and then the SRS 11%. So all the marksman rifles got a buff. This is something that for all of you guys who like using sniper rifles, this is probably something you guys were looking for. But sniper rifles did get a buff. I can see some sniper rifle builds coming out, people running those again. Now for the rifles, one of the most underused weapons in the game because of the rate of fire, right? Like people rather use auto rifles, or if they're going to use a single rifle, they'll use a sniper rifle, right? So the rifles did get some buffs. ACR, 90% damage buff. M16, whoo, 68% damage buff. I love the M16. I would love to see this gun actually be good in PvP. MPV, 68% damage increase. The classic M1A, 39% damage increase. SOCOM M1A, 30% damage. M1A, 30%. Look at these big numbers. The lightweight M4 got 11% buff. The LVOA at 12%. Remember, these are the single fire ones. These aren't the auto rifle ones. SIG 716 got a nerf. The 1886 got a 20% damage increase, less damage drop off past the optimal range. The MDR, 16% damage buff. And then the MK17 got a 17. So it looks like rifles will be back in the mix. They got some nice buffs. Definitely, I'm really excited about this already. Just reading these. We haven't even got to the submachine guns. Submachine guns, the AUG got a 15% buff. MP5, 13%. MP7, 7%. MPX, 38% damage buff. MPX, if you guys don't remember, that's kind of like the house from the Division 1. 38% damage increase, and that thing was already hitting pretty hard. I have that, a couple of those. Man, I can't wait to farm these SMGs and make, you can actually do SMG builds again. The SMG 9 buff, 6%. P90 got a 25%. T80, sorry, the T821 got a negative 18% nerf. The Thompson got a 12%. Tommy gun 6%. UMP 14%. And then you have the Tactical Vector. The Tactical Vector got a buff 21%. The Vector SBR got a buff 17%. And then the Vector ACP got a 25%. So it looks, for me, right now, SMGs will be back in the mix fighting with some of these AR builds. I love this. I love this big change. I can't wait to try this new Carbon 7 with the 8% damage increase. That's something that I'm excited to see. But if you look at these, buffs to the SMG, it looks like SMG's very underpowered all the way up to Title Update 6. Looks like SMGs will be back in the mix. Now, that was for weapon balancing. They did go over some gear talents. I did already kind of cover that. So they did just make some small little changes here and there. Basic gear talents, same thing. They've been tweaking them, buffing them. So if you want to see the full list of that, there will be a list down below. But the one thing that I haven't covered was the changes to the exotic weapons. So we have exotic holster talents that got a small nerf, but then overall their main talents got a buff. So with the Chatterbox while holster, reloading your weapon within 5 seconds after grants 5. So for the Chatterbox while holstered, reloading your weapon within 5 seconds after a kill grants 15% down from 20% rate of fire for 10 seconds. So they get a small 5% nerf. Nemesis while holster gain 15% headshot damage. Now that's down 10% from 25% when scoped in with your current weapon. So a small nerf right there, but that's not towards the Nemesis itself. That's the holster talent. The PvP version remains unchanged at 10%. If you didn't know there was a difference between the PvE and PvP version. The Merciless surprisingly got a holster talent buff while holstered, landing a shot. Still has that 5% chance, so still pretty low, but when you do hit it, it deals 100% damage as explosive damage. So if you have that explosive damage, that's nice right there. That is very nice talent to have. People might actually start running with that holster talent. When my skill builds, I always run with the Merciless as my secondary, and I use it. Now let's talk about the exotic talents. They all got a buff. Every single exotic almost got a buff. The Chatterbox buff, every shot land grants 1% rate of fire to a max of 60%. This resets on reload. Kills with this weapon refill 75%. Now this is up from 20%. Pretty much you don't have to reload with this weapon, right? This weapon right here is the non-reloadable SMG. Never having to reload, just can constantly spam it. Great for PvE. Now remember, this buff lasts 10 seconds. While this buff is active, every shot landed increases magazine capacity by 3, up from 1 to a max of 60. Killing a target consumes the buff to a fully refill and increases magazine. So Chatterbox got a buff. I like that. Now the Sweet Dream, it added a functionality. I'm going to go down to the one that it did change. At the bottom, it says and if drawn, dodging grants 50% weapon damage for 2 seconds. So it says if you have it drawn and then you dodging, grants 50% weapon damage for 2 seconds. So that means you'll get 50% weapon damage for 2 seconds. That's something new that they just added. So if you like using the Sweet Dreams, this might actually be a cool talent they added to it. Remember, they did do a small little change right here. It says after swapping to this weapon, grants 60% up from 35% bonus armor. So they did already buff that right there. Now for the Persilience, it got a buff. We're going to go over what the buff was right here. Whenever an enemy with the Plague of Outcast is killed, they leave a toxic cloud for 10 seconds that deals 1,200%. Now this is up from 400% weapon damage per second to anyone inside and inflicts them the Persilience. Persilience got a nice little buff. For an underused weapon that a lot of people don't use, that's a nice little buff to the Persilience. Let's go to the Merciless. Merciless did get a buff. RPM increased from 260 to 400. Thank you, Jesus. Also, let's see, each primer detonator gains 100% up from 75%, so it got a 25% damage buff per primer detonated. PvP versions remain at 75%, so we got a 25% buff plus the RPM is up. I like that. That's cool. Merciless getting some love. It did get nerfed a while back, but now it did get some love again. Now the Eagle Bearer got an adjustment. Now you guys do know that we did get a reduced damage by 15%, but look at this. They did add some things for a lot of you guys who are looking for, well, what kind of changes did they do to the talents? Headshot kills grant 100% reload speed plus 50% damage. Now that's up 15% damage. So if you get a headshot kill, you gain back that 15% damage that you lost initially. So the Eagle Bearer kind of levels out. Like now it's more performance based. If you get a headshot kill, then you'll get tenacity for 10 seconds. Pretty much you gain back that 15% that you lost initially. So you get 50% up, 50% damage versus that 35% damage we used to get. So we lost 15%, but we gained it back in the talent. So it evens out right there. Also 40 to 80% up from 20 to 80%. So you get a 20% boost initially of damage taken is delayed until the buff expires. So once you have tenacity, you get right off the bat 40% damage reduction. Love that right there. And then this right here, all total delayed damage is reduced for each enemy killed while the buff is active, up to 100% with only 3 kills. Now you used to get 5 kills. Now if you just get 3 kills, no damage taken. So for PvE, huge buff. I don't mind it, right? We lose a little bit of 15% damage, but they gave us back by performance. If you can get those headshot kills, 50% damage. So you gain the 15% back. So it pretty much does the same exact damage as long as you're getting those headshot kills. Now for the Diamondback, it got a buff in PvE. Let's see what the buff was. I think it was hitting the enemy consumes the mark, guarantee a critical hit with 20% total damage. A new random target is marked afterwards whenever you reload. That was the same. But right here, while drawn, each time a round is reloaded, gain 20% up from 15% bonus armor for 3 seconds. So that's up 5% right there. Although currently live versions text says 20%, there was a bug that only did 15%. Is now grants 20% instead of the 15%. So they did buff it. And before, remember this is for PvE, they did buff it before it was only giving 15%. Now there's a new functionality for PvP. Headshots against players are guaranteed to critically hit and provide a stack of deep fangs. So again, what they're doing is they're giving players who are getting headshots, more skilled shots, more buffs. So if you can land headshots, become a better player, then you're rewarded for that, right? Instead of hitting body shots, you're hitting those headshots. You're rewarded for hitting the head. I like that right there. And that was pretty much most of the changes for the exotics. Remember, I'll have a full list of this down in the description. The biggest change, the stash, the hip fire now forces the character to walk, and then the weapon. Woo, the weapon. Thank you. Finally, some weapon buffs. Loving this. And let me know what weapon you're excited to use out of all of these buffs for the ARs. For the ARs, I'm excited to try out the new Carbine 7, see how well it does. For the SMGs, the MPX, looking to try that out. The MP5, the AUG, a lot of these weapons I'm looking to try out. I can't wait to try these out, but let's see how they do. Let me know what you guys think about this. I appreciate all the support. Leave a thumbs up if you found this video useful. As always, guys, thank you for always supporting the channel. But until the next Division 2 video, nothing but skills is out.